Sometimes you find dinosaurs and sometimes you find humans. And it is wondrous to know that just bones can tell so much about the past, of how greeny the planet was, what creatures ate millions of years ago, how our ancestors walked on Earth. Archaeology is very fascinating, and sometimes lucky scientists come across a dig that shocks even the most radical of them, with discoveries that bust myths and shine the Luxor lamp on something we didn't even imagine. From headless Vikings and shackled skeletons to Neanderthal cannibalism, here are 15 of the most extreme discoveries that will absolutely blow your mind. So guys, let's kick off things with number 15. The Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead isn't just a spooky-sounding name, it's a real thing, and it's as creepy as it sounds. Scattered across various Egyptian dig sites, archaeologists have pieced together this ancient manuscript over centuries. The final missing fragments? Found in the basement of a Scottish museum, because why not? So, what is it? Well, it's pretty puzzling. Think of it as a cheat sheet for the afterlife. It's filled with spells, rituals, and instructions to guide the souls of the dead safely into the underworld. Basically, a how not to haunt the living manual. The Egyptians believed the journey to the afterlife was a dangerous one, with demons, judgment, and all sorts of supernatural tests along the way. While Hollywood loves to sensationalize the Book of the Dead as some curse-filled, zombie-raising artifact, its real purpose was surprisingly practical, keeping spirits out of trouble in the afterlife and off our backs in the living world. Number 14. Elongated alien heads. If you've ever seen those eerie, elongated skulls and thought, did aliens crash land and start a family here? You're not alone. But the real story isn't extraterrestrial. It's just as weird but a lot more human. In ancient Mexico and Peru, some communities practiced cranial deformation by tightly wrapping a baby's skull with cloth or wood. Why? Because nothing says status symbol like a head shaped like a cone. The result was creepy. The skulls grew longer and thinner in the areas left unbound, giving adults a head shape that would terrify any modern audience. It was often done for aesthetic or cultural reasons, signifying high social standing or tribal identity. This practice was widespread, and the process started when children were young because their skulls were still soft. So, no, aliens weren't involved. Just humans being humans, taking body modification to the super extreme level long before tattoos and piercings were a thing. Number 13. Wearing skulls. In Ecuador, an excavation in the 2010s uncovered a haunting practice that still defies explanation. Infant corpses buried wearing the skulls of older children as helmets. The remains, estimated to be 2,000 years old, left archaeologists with more questions than answers. Why were these tiny bodies adorned in such a macabre way? One theory suggests it was a ritual to protect their souls in the afterlife, a form of spiritual armor to shield them from harm. But that raises darker questions. How did they obtain these skulls? Were they willingly given, or did this grim ritual involve violence? The grotesque find offers a glimpse into an ancient world where death and mysticism intertwined. It's unsettling and fascinating, forcing us to confront the sheer alienness of some past cultures. Even now, the image of infants wearing skull helmets lingers. Number 12. Cursed stolen amethyst. Colonialism brought plenty of stolen treasures, but this one may have taken revenge. The amethyst, now known as the Delhi purple sapphire, was taken from a temple in Kanpur, India, during the 1857 rebellion. Its first owner, a British soldier, quickly spiraled into ruin. Misfortune followed every keeper after him: bankruptcy, health issues, and even suicide. The final owner, Edward Heron Allen, became so paranoid that he tried to get rid of it multiple times, once by hurling it into a canal. Yet the cursed gem always found its way back. Eventually, Heron Allen sealed it inside 7 protective boxes and left strict instructions for it to remain locked away until long after his death. Today, the amethyst sits in London's Natural History Museum. Though it's displayed safely, staff admit that even handling the artifact feels unsettling. Some believe its curse lingers, making this gem a chilling reminder of karma that refuses to fade. Number 11. A pit full of severed hands. Archaeology is full of weird finds, but this one? Well, this one's in a league of its own. In Avaris, Egypt, home of pharaohs and flashy tombs, a group of lucky archaeologists hit the jackpot of creepy. They uncovered pits, but instead of mummified bodies or treasure, they found severed hands. And all right ones, at that. Yep, someone went on a wrist-cutting spree 3,600 years ago. Historians believe these hands belonged to defeated enemies, or people offered as trophies in some grim ceremony. Warriors would lop off a right hand, throw it in the pit, and collect their shiny reward. Gold, because nothing says victory like waving a severed hand in someone's face. Even stranger, there were no signs of the bodies. It's as if the hands showed up solo, ready to haunt their own weird horror movie. This find didn't just rewrite history books, it shredded them. Egypt, man. Always bringing the scary drama. What do you say? Doesn't it? Number 10. Headless Vikings of Dorset. When you think Vikings, you picture warriors swinging axes, storming shores, and living their best brutal lives. But in Dorset, England, archaeologists found a different story. A mass grave of headless Vikings. Yep, 54 bodies, heads not included. Well, mostly. They found 51 heads tossed into a pile nearby, but the other 3, gone. Did someone take them home as souvenirs? Well, no one knows. The scene wasn't just gruesome, it was chaotic. These poor guys were beheaded in the messiest way possible, with hacking marks suggesting someone seriously failed Sword 101. The leading theory? These were invaders caught and executed as an example because nothing screams, "Don't mess with us," like dumping a stack of headless bodies in a pit. It's a stark reminder that even the fiercest warriors can become cautionary tales. And those missing 3 heads? Let's just hope they're not decorating someone's ancient mantelpiece. Number 9. A tomb full of screaming mummies. In ancient Egypt, the dead were meant to rest in peace, but someone forgot to tell these mummies. Discovered by archaeologist Gaston Maspero, these unfortunate souls were found with their jaws wide open, stuck in mid-scream for eternity. It's like walking into a horror movie you didn't sign up for. Some historians think they were poisoned as punishment and then mummified alive. A one-way ticket to the most excruciating end imaginable. Others say the screaming faces are just the natural result of decomposition when the jaw isn't bound shut. Either way, these mummies are giving off eternal nightmare vibes. One of the most infamous cases, nicknamed the Screaming Man, wasn't even wrapped properly. Instead of the usual royal treatment, he was slathered in quicklime, a material used to dishonor the dead. Was he a traitor? A criminal? A disgraced royal? Whatever his story, his final expression makes it clear. His death wasn't peaceful, and his afterlife isn't quiet. All right, guys, from here, things will be wilder. Number 8. Neanderthal cannibalism. The Goyet Caves in Belgium hold a secret you probably didn't want to know. Our ancient cousins, the Neanderthals, were carving each other up like a Sunday roast. Researchers found bones from at least 5 individuals, scraped, cracked, and even polished. Classic signs of cannibalism. And if that wasn't unsettling enough, they found reindeer bones treated the exact same way. Human flesh might have just been another menu option. So, what's the deal? Was this survival cannibalism during harsh winters, or were these Neanderthals indulging in their darker cravings? No one's entirely sure, but either option paints a pretty bleak picture of prehistoric life. And it's not just about eating. These polished bones suggest they were also repurposed as tools. Think about it. Your leg might have been dinner one day and a hammer the next. Life was brutal, and this discovery proves our ancestors weren't just hunters and gatherers. They were survivors at any cost. Number 7. Vampire mummies with bricks in their mouths. In 16th century Venice, people didn't mess around when it came to suspected vampires. Forget steaks and garlic. They took it up a notch, shoving bricks and stones into the mouths of corpses to stop them from rising and feasting on the living. And no, this wasn't some obscure one-off. Hundreds of these graves have been uncovered. The logic was simple. If a vampire couldn't bite, it couldn't spread its curse. Plagues were raging across Europe, and when people dug up graves and saw bloated, decayed bodies, normal decomposition, but they didn't know that, they freaked out. Clearly, it had to be vampires spreading disease. The most famous discovery is the Vampire of Venice, a skeleton with a massive brick lodged in her mouth. Whether she was a scapegoat for paranoia or someone's bad ex, we'll never know. But one thing's for sure. 16th century Europe wasn't taking chances with the undead, even if they weren't real. Number 6. The original rest stop. Turns out the Romans invented highway rest stops long before your favorite gas station convenience store. In Bishop's Stortford, England, archaeologists unearthed a 2,000-year-old roadside complex, complete with an inn, a blacksmith shop, and even a temple. Yep, your ancient road trip included lodging, car, chariot repairs, and a place to pray you'd survive the journey. This wasn't just a dusty way station either. The site was buzzing with activity. They found 87 graves, likely locals and travelers who didn't make it to their destination, and a bunch of coins from Emperor Nero's time, proving business was booming. And here's the real kicker. Military artifacts suggest this spot might have been run by retired soldiers. So not only could you get your wheel fixed, but you'd also hear war stories over a pint of watered-down wine. The Romans didn't just build roads, they built an entire lifestyle around them. Now let's move to number 5, a mass grave of infants. Underneath an ancient Roman bathhouse in Ashkelon, Israel, archaeologists made a discovery so dark it still haunts historians. At first, the bones were mistaken for animals, but closer inspection revealed the grim truth. They belonged to babies. Over 100 infant skeletons were found, all less than a week old, tossed away like trash. Infanticide wasn't unheard of in Roman times. Unwanted babies were often abandoned to die of exposure. But this was different. These infants were healthy, yet their lives were deliberately ended. Why? One theory is that they were victims of brothel workers, where unwanted pregnancies were dealt with swiftly and brutally. It's a heart-wrenching reminder of how vulnerable the powerless were in ancient societies. These tiny lives, discarded and forgotten, offer a haunting glimpse into a world where survival often comes at a terrible cost. It's a chapter of history that's as disturbing as it is necessary to remember. Number 4. The Starving of Saqqara. The Starving of Saqqara is a statue that feels more like a riddle than an artifact. Found in Egypt near the ancient burial grounds of Saqqara, the small sculpture depicts two painfully thin figures with oversized heads and skeletal frames. It's haunting, sure, but also completely baffling. No one knows who made it, when, or why. There's an undeciphered inscription on the back, adding to its mystery. Some scholars believe it represents prisoners of war, perhaps starved captives paraded as symbols of dominance. Others think it might depict a famine or serve as a warning of divine punishment. The truth? Still buried in history's shadows. With no clear answers, the Starving of Saqqara continues to mystify experts and laypeople alike. Its grotesque yet powerful imagery leaves an unsettling impression. reminding us of how much of ancient life and suffering we may never fully understand. Number 3. Mount Owen Moa with the strange claws. In 1986, explorers in New Zealand stumbled upon something straight out of a horror movie, a claw that looked like it belonged to some underground monster. But no, it wasn't from a cave-dwelling beast. It was the mummified claw of an upland moa, a prehistoric flightless bird that went extinct centuries ago. What made the discovery spine-chilling was how perfectly preserved it was. The flesh and scaly skin were still intact, making it look like the bird had just recently lost a fight and left its weapon behind. Naturally, the first thought was, are there more of these clawed creatures still lurking in these caves? Well, there weren't. The upland moa, once roaming New Zealand's forests, was a massive bird with no natural predators, until humans showed up. The preserved claw serves as a haunting reminder of a species wiped out by hunting and habitat destruction, leaving behind one of the creepiest relics of the ancient world. Number 2. Infanticide and a bathhouse full of baby bones. Romans loved their bathhouses, but the one found in Ashkelon, Israel, came with a horrifying twist. Instead of soap and olive oil, archaeologists discovered piles of tiny bones buried beneath the site. And no, these weren't animal remains. They belonged to babies. Over 100 infant skeletons were uncovered, all less than a week old. At first, theories swirled. Were they casualties of some catastrophic event? Did a disease wipe them out? Sadly, the truth appears even darker. Historians believe these infants were unwanted or born into dire circumstances, and the bathhouse became their grave. Infanticide wasn't uncommon in Roman times, but this discovery was chilling. The sheer scale suggests it wasn't a one-time tragedy, but a systematic practice. While we'll never know the full story, the bathhouse serves as a grim reminder of a world where the most vulnerable were often the most expendable. Life is just a messy stuff. Number 1. The largest mass sacrifice ever discovered. Ancient Mexico was no stranger to sacrifices, but this discovery near Teotihuacan takes the blood-soaked cake. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of over 150 people, all neatly decapitated and arranged in a once-thriving lake bed. These weren't random sacrifices either. The skulls all belonged to healthy prime-age individuals, suggesting they were chosen deliberately. It's not just the scale that's shocking, it's the precision. The victims were lined up as if the ceremony was as much about spectacle as sacrifice. Some theorize it was to appease the gods or mark an important event, but honestly, it's hard to find a good reason for mass beheadings. And the fact that this all took place in what was once a lake? It adds another layer of eerie mystique. Water, blood, and death, all tied together in a macabre ritual that reminds us just how far ancient civilizations would go to honor their gods or terrify their enemies. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.